Hi, everyone. I'm Pam Long, Digital Marketing Strategist and Consultant with True Digital Communications. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about when, where, and how to use digital marketing tactics to influence purchase behavior. But before we get started, we have a few housekeeping notes. We're recording this webinar, and we'll send out a link to the replay afterward, so you can go back to any key points you may have missed or want to share with others on your team. We'll try to leave time for questions at the end, but if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and ask them using the chat box to the right of your screen. Delivering a webinar feels a lot like talking to yourself, so feel free to chime in. We'll keep an eye out for questions and comments and do our best to address them as they come up. If there are any issues with the audio or visuals during the webinar, please use the chat box to alert us. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally viewers outside of True will encounter an issue when everything still looks and sounds fine to us, so let us know. All right, let's get started. When we work with clients who are considering adding digital channels to their marketing mix or who have used digital marketing in the past but want to reevaluate their strategy, we hear variations on three common questions. Where should we advertise? How much should we spend? And what results should we expect? It can be frustrating when we answer those questions with more questions, but there simply is no one-size-fits-all answer. What, where, how, and how much you should invest varies widely from client to client and situation to situation. So in today's webinar, we're going to walk through 5 considerations for developing and implementing a successful digital marketing strategy that's tailored for your organization, your business goals, and your target audiences. We need to know: who are your potential clients or customers? What information do they need to make a decision? When do you want to engage them? What outcome do you want to achieve? And what resources do you have available? At the end of our hour together, you'll have a better understanding of how digital tactics fit into your overall marketing plan, and you'll have identified key points in the decision-making process where you have the best opportunities to engage with potential clients or customers online. So who are your potential clients or customers? Anyone who's gone to Target with a member of the opposite sex knows men and women shop differently, and online purchases and business purchases are no exception. It doesn't matter if you're selling inexpensive products to consumers online or enterprise-level solutions to executives in the C-suite. Basic gender differences will still influence how your prospects research and make decisions. Men tend to follow a utilitarian, logic-based approach. Marketing messages need to get to the point quickly, focus on the product or service, and use active statements that demonstrate value. Men have a stronger preference for text platforms and forums, but they're also more likely than women to use their social media accounts for business reasons, and, unfortunately, more likely to ignore social media ads. Women use all social media channels, but they tend to spend more time on visual platforms than men. They represent the majority of users on Pinterest and a high percentage of users on Instagram, and they're a little less likely to use LinkedIn. When it comes to purchase behavior, women browse. They spend more time collecting information and comparing options. Emotion plays a role in purchasing decisions, and they're more likely than men to interact with brands via social media. Women make or contribute to 85% of all purchase decisions, even decisions for products or services that have traditionally been marketed more toward men. But marketers in some segments have been slow to recognize and respond appropriately to that fact. The automobile industry is a classic example. Female drivers outnumber men, but 75% of women say they feel car marketers just don't understand them. It starts with the cars themselves, which are typically designed with larger men's bodies in mind, and extends all the way through to what's said, how it's said, and where it's said when it comes to effectively reaching female consumers. An effective digital campaign isn't just about crafting a different message for men versus women. Gender differences also mean that messages may need to be delivered across a wider range of online platforms in order to reach influencers and decision makers. Generational differences influence online behavior and purchasing patterns as well. Millennials respond surprisingly well to email. In a 2017 survey, 67% of millennials said a brand's email communication was important for their decision to purchase. And in the 3 months prior to that survey, 83% had made a purchase as a result of an email. Millennials also have a strong preference for Facebook compared to other social media platforms. They're more likely to complete a transaction online than their older counterparts, and they're frequent purchasers on Amazon. So while email is still an important part of the decision-making process, Gen Xers respond to it less than millennials, and baby boomers respond to it even less than Gen Xers. Baby boomers are also less likely than younger generations to complete a purchase on a mobile device, unless it's a highly trusted site. So Amazon wins with this group too. These are just a few examples of how differences between and different combinations of basic demographic segments can determine what messaging and digital marketing tactics will be more or less effective for influencing a purchasing decision. For complex business-to-business purchases, it's not uncommon for a middle manager to fall into an information gathering role. They're the ones who are doing research online, seeing and responding to ads, and building a case for a particular product or service. They're more likely than C-level executives to take social media messages into consideration, and also more likely to visit multiple sources and dig deeper into content to gather data to support a recommendation and ultimately a purchase decision. Beyond demographic characteristics, there's yet another set of job-related factors that further define your B2B audiences. What level of education do they have? What job titles do they hold? What problems are they responsible for solving? What industry segments do they work in? The companies in those industries have unique privacy concerns. Education, finance, and high-tech industries, just to name a few, often have restrictions on what online platforms their employees can access from works. And sometimes they restrict what they can use in their off hours as well. So social media becomes a real challenge. Don't forget that consumer purchases may involve multiple decision makers too. Major purchases are often a joint decision between spouses, and some may involve multiple generations of influencers. For example, parents choosing a vacation destination or looking at private schools may bring their kids into that decision, and adult children may influence or make purchases for their aging parents. When you start combining basic audience demographic factors we've just mentioned, you begin to see that an effective digital marketing campaign isn't just a matter of what you say. Delivering those messages on the right platforms at the right times is critical to your success. So how do you determine when, where, and how to engage those well-defined audiences? There are a lot of different ways to explain a customer journey and the resulting marketing strategy. We tend to break the purchase process into 5 stages with distinct groups of tactics for each. The awareness stage, the research stage, the decision stage, the conversion stage, or sometimes more accurately, the conversion point, and the post-purchase stage, which includes adoption, retention, and advocacy. At its most basic, the entire process looks something like this. I have a need. I want to address the need. I explore my options, I narrow them down, and I make a choice. A B2B example might look like this. The need in this case is more complex. An entire team might be involved in the decision-making process, but the path is still basically the same. Regardless of the model you use, the earlier in the process you're trying to engage prospects, the more you need to venture into their territory. As they become more familiar with your offering, they'll be more comfortable engaging on platforms or channels you fully control, like your website. But at the beginning, think of it more like dating. You'll never get to meet that special someone if you only hang out at home. You've got to go where the people are, and not just any people, your people, based on those audience personas we talked about earlier. Let's dig a little deeper into consumer behaviors at each stage and the digital marketing tactics that work best, beginning with the awareness stage. Using awareness as a label for this first stage is fairly common, but it also creates some issues right off the bat, because marketers often confuse brand awareness and brand recall with purchase funnel awareness. They're very different, but they work together. Purchase funnel awareness is a customer mindset. It's the point when a consumer first becomes conscious of a need and a desire to address that need. Back to that my feet hurt kind of awareness in the previous examples. So your prospects may not have any preconceived notion of how to address the need. And your first opportunity to interact with them may depend more on who and where they are rather than what they're looking for, because they may not actually actively be looking yet. Going back to those audience personas again, Marketing to consumers in the earliest awareness stage sometimes depend more on demographic and broad assumptions based on your insights into the issues that are common to those personas. Engagement happens when you're in the right place at the right time. Customers aren't yet ready to seek you out. So marketing in the awareness stage means meeting and reaching potential clients or customers on their turf. The actual tactics and messaging will vary broadly, depending on how well defined your audience is. If your product or service is relevant to prospects who are limited by location, but who may represent a wide range of interests and income levels, geography may be the single best defining factor early in the process. In traditional advertising, billboards, local radio and TV, and local newspaper advertising are common tactics for location-based businesses whose audience is fairly broad. So going back to the automotive industry, local dealerships are a perfect example. While the audience for a specific car brand or model might be fairly defined, car buyers as a larger group are extremely diverse. Manufacturers work hard to generate brand recognition and awareness on a national basis in the hope that they'll be part of the considerations when consumers are ready to buy. On a local level, dealers do the same thing, casting a wide net within a limited geographic area to try to be in the right place at the right time when potential customers begin thinking about a new car. The more detail you can add to your personas, the more you can use factors like interests, past purchasing behavior, and offline affiliations to narrow down that prospect pool, the more awareness stage tactics can bypass the general population and begin to hone in on an audience that's more receptive to your message and consequently a little less expensive to reach. Cell phone buyers are another consumer group that looks really broad on the surface. It seems like anyone age 18 to 80 plus is a potential buyer. And while that may be true, there are distinct subsegments within that broader audience. Just a few examples. You have brand loyalists who might be motivated by an actual need for a new device, but won't consider one from another manufacturer. iPhone users in particular are a fiercely loyal subsegment, particularly if they own multiple devices and depend on their interconnectivity. Tech aficionados may not be reacting to a device failure, but rather to a device opportunity. They want to have the latest phone or the latest features as soon as they're released. Their need is defined more by the prestige of being the first to have the hottest new thing. Functional users may be motivated less by brand and more by changing responsibilities. For example, bloggers and content producers may seek to upgrade their device when the images or videos they're producing no longer look as professional as their competitors. And as they approach middle age, adults may be buying devices for their kids, themselves, and an aging parent who needs a more user-friendly phone. One person may be playing the role of multiple personas in that case. Some of those factors play into messaging, but others determine which online tactics and ad placements will be the most effective, based on consumers' offline purchase behavior or specific needs and interests. Business-to-business marketing typically targets a more defined audience, even in the earliest purchasing stages. The nature of a B2B product or service naturally limits its appeal to a smaller segment of the population. And trade journal advertising is a traditional, non-digital starting point for B2B advertising to potential clients and prospects in the awareness stage. Prospects likely come from specific industries or in specific employers. They hold certain degrees and job titles. They may belong to particular trade associations or read specific publications. Advertising in locations where they already congregate ensures you're reaching the right audience. But without the benefit of behavioral cues, print ads at the awareness stage may focus more on brand benefits than addressing a specific need. Online advertising in the awareness stage works much the same way as traditional tactics. If geography is the best defining factor for your prospective clients or customers, display ads can be set up to only appear to customers who are searching for or located in an area as small as a single zip code. The more precisely you can define your audience, the more effectively you can get your message in front of the right people by placing ads on the sites they already visit regularly. Interests plus location plus keywords and phrases in the content they're reading narrows the pool of prospects and the pool of potential ad placements. Add in behavioral cues and near real-time feedback, and you can further refine your strategy to keep placing messaging in front of people who are likely to be within or closely related to your target audience. Social advertising is also very effective at the awareness stage. If your audience personas go beyond beyond broad demographics, Facebook in particular gives you some great options. You can combine geo-targeting, demographics, interests, brand preferences, life stage indicators, job titles, education levels, and even more to create a highly targeted campaign aimed at consumers who aren't even actively looking for you yet. The more complex or more unfamiliar a product or solution may be, the more education a client or consumer will need before they make a purchase. And the awareness stage, you still need to make sure your message will appear where your audience is likely to hang out online, but you need to rely on tactics that allow more in-depth content. Things like blogger relations programs, guest posting, and public relations campaigns all provide platforms for getting long-form content into the sites, blogs, and publications your prospects are already reading and visiting. Last, don't overlook video advertising as an awareness tactic. Consumers use YouTube to educate themselves on a variety of topics, and the targeting options for displaying your message before or during relevant videos work much the same way as display advertising, allowing you to hone in on specific keywords, topics, or interests when placing ads. So if we go back to our cell phone example for a minute, the marketing team that's looking to use long-form content to educate consumers might consider a variety of tactics. There's an unboxing video on a tech guy's YouTube channel, which is my son and my husband's favorite thing to watch. A comparison of video capabilities on several models written on a professional blogger site, and a sponsored review of 3 different options from one manufacturer on a mom blog. At the end of the day, they're all promoting phones, but each tactic delivers customized, informative content to a different subset of prospects. As you plan your marketing strategy, keep in mind that not all tactics are appropriate at the very early awareness stages, and that tactic works best when you begin to layer together multiple ways of reaching your target audience. In general, we define the awareness stage as starting at that first, this is an issue and eventually I'm going to have to resolve it, consciousness of a problem. It continues all the way to the point that the issue or problem becomes obvious, irritating, or painful enough that your prospect begins to actively seek a solution. Once a prospect moves from passive observation to active pursuit, they've entered the research stage. The research stage is all about gathering data and identifying potential solutions. Many of the same tactics you use to pique their interest during the awareness stage carry over into research, and new options for reaching prospects come into play as you gather more information about their problem or intent. Marketers are able to shift away from relying solely on third-party paid and owned channels to get their message in front of prospects. While those channels are still used to draw attention, potential clients or customers who need more information to make a decision are more likely to follow those entry points back to the source, so your brand's own channels. This is where digital tactics have a huge advantage over offline tactics, the ability to engage, react, and quickly serve up appropriate marketing messages. In the awareness stage, tactics focused on getting information in front of the prospects in the course of their normal online activity. In the research stage, tactics focus more on interacting with prospect, anticipating their needs, and delivering relevant content. Search advertising represents a huge opportunity to reach prospects in the research stage. 80% of shoppers conduct online research before making a purchase. And as an initial point of contact, search literally tells us how to solve a prospect's problem or meet their need. It tells us what's top of mind in that moment. Doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to do. Online searchers look for information in several ways. They may search for a thing, a specific product or brand. If you offer that product, you need to make sure your message and positioning are more attractive than the competitors who also sells that product. If you're a brand, but not the brand they're looking for, there may still be an opportunity to present your message and entice and address the need that's implied in a search for that brand. You need to understand what that brand represents to the searcher and be able to react to the same kind of factors. Prospects may have some idea what product or service will address their need, but they aren't sure what to call it, and they may want to see more options than a thing-based search will return. In that case, they might use a query that describes the potential solution. A weekend tennis player who's having trouble recovering from their most recent match might use soft brace for elbow pain to describe what's actually a compression sleeve for tennis elbow. He's starting to take a stab at what might solve the problem, but he doesn't quite have the terminology down yet. And if they're really at a loss for how to describe the solution, prospects may phrase their search in terms of the problem they're trying to solve. A consumer who's just discovered a puddle on their basement floor may Google leaky water heater if they're not sure whether they need a plumber or a part to stop the flow of water. This is important to keep in mind if you're introducing a product or service that's unique or outside your target audience's current awareness. In those cases, your search ads will need to concentrate heavily on that problem-based search behavior. Prospects can't search for your specific solution if they don't know it exists, but you can still reach them by focusing on the pain point they're trying to resolve. Take that out to a little more complex business example. Someone who's searching for streamline accounts payable or even process invoice faster terms might be looking for best practices or how-to information, but they're also a great candidate for software that automates those processes. By focusing on their challenges, a software provider creates an opportunity to engage, even if the searcher had no idea that software might be the most efficient way to accomplish their goal. The same query-based approach can carry over into display advertising. By aligning ads with third-party content that contains the same problem or solution keywords, marketers can ensure their message displays in the right place at the right time when their prospects are actively gathering information. Search and display ads that target keywords related to specific features, benefits, or pain points draw potential clients and customers to your website or blog and connect them with content that addresses their needs. This is where you begin to see tactics interacting and overlapping. The calls to action on those landing pages encourage prospects to sign up for an email newsletter or download more information in exchange for their email address or request a discount coupon, which in turn enables further contact through content marketing. And then remarketing ads continue to engage customers as they go about their online day, with messaging that can change and fine-tune based on how they interact with specific sections of your website over time. When we talked earlier about the ways men and women research purchase decisions, we mentioned social media. In general, men use social media to gather information they need to build influence. Social media helps them perform research, gather relevant contacts, and ultimately increase their status. They're more likely to ignore social media ads, but a well-optimized Facebook profile that can be found through search, along with straightforward organic posts and information, can engage them. Women are less likely to use social media for business, but more likely to seek out and trust word-of-mouth recommendations from their friends when it comes to a purchasing decision. Current happy customers who are now in that retention and advocacy stage are a prime source for testimonials that can be used in digital marketing to prospects who are still in the middle of the decision-making process. The layering tactics to reach and engage prospects begins in the awareness stage and continues all the way through the customer journey. As prospects interact with your digital ads and messages, they give you additional insights into their thought processes that you in turn use to deliver more targeted information. This is the number one benefit of digital advertising versus traditional, the ability to react, to respond, to pivot if you need to. After gathering sufficient information, prospective clients and customers identify a consideration set, a group of products, services, or brands that all potentially meet their needs. Focus shifts away from gathering information and finding as many options as possible to narrowing down those options to arrive at a final selection. They've officially reached the decision stage of the process. Digital tactics continue to play an important role. Marketers can engage with consumers as they're comparing possible solutions and influence a final decision, but some of the tactics that worked well for capturing information early in the process have less of an impact now. So rather than adding new tactics, the decision stage is all about focusing on the smaller set that can best deliver the information a consumer needs to decide your solution is the best one. We mentioned remarketing. Continuing to display your message on sites and blogs your prospect already trusts continues to play a key role in the decision stage. With added insight into what pages and sections of your site a potential client or customer visits, remarketing can be fine-tuned to deliver more relevant content over time. So rather than simply re-promoting your brand, it can re-promote a product line that someone visited, or can re-promote a specific product or a feature or a demonstration piece that they spent a lot of time interacting with. Remarketing is very smart if you give it the tools to work with and continue to allow it to adapt. You can also use remarketing, negative remarketing, to stop interacting with customers who've already made a purchase. So there are a lot of cases where I see marketers skip this tactic, and it can be highly annoying. If you've made a purchase online, and for the next 10 days you can continue to see that exact same product, that's a case of they started the remarketing process, but they didn't think to adjust it as you've made that purchase. And that can actually turn consumers off a brand. At the decision-making stage, search ads also play an important role and add another layer of insight into your target's mindset. Search behavior changes as consumers work their way through the decision-making process. Their search queries become more specific, and the type of information they're looking for shifts from general topics in the awareness stage to queries that include brand names, product names, specific features or benefits, or comparison terms during the research phase. And during the decision phase, they shift again, this time to include words that indicate intent to purchase. In addition to direct product comparison, you may see queries related to pricing, shipping, discounts, or warranties, all as strong indicators of a purchase intent. For B2B services and high investment transactions that are typically completed offline, search may still come into play. You may see queries shift to someone who's looking for contact information, reviews or testimonials of a product or service or company. They're looking for case studies or ROI calculators and examples. Of all the tactics we employ during the decision phase, few have the ability to deliver active leads accompanied by clear evidence of exactly what information they need to make a decision the way search can. You need to be continually learning from that search behavior. What keywords are you seeing at each phase? What content do they interact with? What triggers them to take the next step? Marketing tactics that focus on educating your target audience continue to deliver through all stages of the funnel. Prospects who noticed your guest posts, product reviews, or videos during the awareness stage may actively return to that content now to confirm details or compare your product's features against a competitor's. Content marketing continues to send relevant information right to their inbox, and white papers, case studies, or testimonials can provide the final push they need to make a decision. These types of formal, downloadable content can be especially helpful in cases where the person gathering information isn't the final decision maker. Arming a middle manager to make a recommendation to a higher up who will approve the final transaction means making that manager comfortable. They need to trust that the recommendation they hand off will result in a positive experience for their company. So for all the time you spend building up to it, conversion is almost anticlimactic. In the grand scheme of things, it's a single point in the process rather than an extended stage. So offering a discount, an extended warranty, or free shipping online can certainly sway a shopper at the last minute, even influence them away from completing their transaction with a competitor. For a B2B prospect who's considering purchasing software or a subscription-based service, setting an offer for a free trial or via email may nudge them along in that final decision. The opportunity to engage or influence a customer may be limited due to the short time frame of this stage, but it's still there. Your messaging needs to be spot on and very timely, but a lot of the same tactics still apply. In real life, this customer journey isn't neatly linear. The lines between stages are fuzzy. Consumers may bounce back and forth between stages, discard options and start the whole process over, or repeat the same process in one stage for an extended period of time. Customers who are making low-cost, low-risk purchases may move through the process quickly, and impulse purchasers might appear to skip whole stages altogether. Strategic placement of candy and magazines at a grocery store checkout triggers a need, presents options for consideration, and facilitates a purchase on the spot. That's the entire decision-making cycle compressed into the time it takes to unload your grocery cart. For high-risk, high-cost purchases, the entire cycle could take months or even years. Even the motivation for how customers move through the process or don't move through the process varies from person to person. If you think back to our sample cell phone buyer personas, I'm very much a functional buyer. I only care about a handful of features, and as long as those features are still working well, I'll stick with my current device. I dislike everything about researching, buying, and setting up a new phone so much that I'll put it off as long as possible and then try to barrel through the entire process in a weekend. If I've had a good experience with my current device, chances are I'll just purchase the next generation of that same device because I don't want to spend a lot of time learning new technology. My husband, on the other hand, is a self-proclaimed geek. He loves gadgets and new technology, and he gets excited about the research process. He reads reviews, he watches video comparisons, he plays with the phones on display at Best Buy for months before he makes a decision. He enjoys the hunt more than the resulting acquisition, sometimes so much that he starts that process all over again as soon as he's purchased a phone. He makes me a little nuts. As a marketer, it's always interesting to me to see how service providers or device manufacturers attempt to entice and engage the two of us. We're similar age, similar background, similar interests, similar education level, both purchasing devices at the same time, but our processes are very, very different. Post-purchase marketing is often overlooked in marketing planning, but it's an important part of creating a positive, lasting relationship with your customers. The old adage holds true. It's easier to generate additional revenue from a customer you already have than to acquire a new one. If your product or service model includes ongoing subscriptions, repeat purchases, or regular renewals, marketing tactics can help build loyalty, generate repeat revenue, and solidify an ongoing preference for your brand over competitors. You want to make that repeat transaction automatic and not give them a reason to go back through that research process again to see if something else might be better than what they've already committed to. For products or services that aren't simple or straightforward, post-purchase marketing helps reassure your customer that they made the right decision, and it makes the implementation process less stressful and frustrating. If you've ever resorted to searching YouTube videos to figure out how to assemble a product, or reached out to a company on Twitter when a service you paid for wasn't up to par, you've already experienced how online marketing can support and reinforce a purchase decision. Going back to that cell phone example, the best thing the manufacturer or service provider could do for me after I've purchased a new phone would be to send out a series of emails over the next 2 weeks or so with some really short, quick tips for how to get the most out of that device. That's the part of the process that I dislike, is learning where things have moved to or how they work differently. If you can simplify that for me, you're going to gain my loyalty. At this stage of the process, organic social media not only serves as a value or customer service channel, but you can also regularly re-engage customers. Encourage them to share reviews and testimonials. Turn this group into advocates, and the information they share on your Facebook page feed right back into your marketing process and becomes a proof point for the next wave of prospects for working their way through the purchase funnel. Content marketing in the post-purchase stage focuses on new features or iterations of your products and provides helpful information during adoption and implementation. That's my cell phone example. It also comes into play post-purchase, and your blog can become a continual source of information and a regular destination for happy customers. These are the same tactics that are employed prior to purchase, just with a different content strategy and different timing intervals to keep customers and clients you've worked so hard to earn. Implementing a full-blown digital marketing program involving 10 or more online platforms isn't always a possibility, at least not right out of the gate. Programs need time to grow and evolve, and that means picking and choosing which tactics you're going to implement and test first. Typically, those decisions come down to resource availability and business goals. So, when we say resources in this context, we're talking about dollars, time, and existing assets. Assets are any written content that can be adapted and repurposed for online channels, whether it's written materials, background information, images, graphics, videos. The more content you already have readily available, the less time and budget you'll need to get a campaign started. If budget is an issue, you have some options. You can implement a strategy that focuses on prospects that are in the research phase rather than the awareness phase. By starting lower in the funnel, you'll miss some audience opportunity, But you'll also reach a smaller subgroup that tends to have a higher conversion rate. They're more actively engaged already. They're closer to making a decision. You spend less time and have to worry about fewer platforms and messages in order to talk to them. You can focus on tactics that you can implement in-house if you have the available skill set, but you might run the risk of having significant gaps in your strategy based on your staff's availability. You can choose to focus on just one segment of your target audience at a time. That can mean limiting your efforts to one geographic market, marketing to a few key purchase personas rather than all of them, or promoting a smaller subset of your total products or services. That geographic market idea, limiting your initial launch to one key location or a handful of key locations, can be really good too if you're in a situation where you're launching something new for the first time and need to work through your distribution process or need to work through fulfillment. By targeting one geographic area, you not only have a chance to work out all of your marketing bugs, but you have a chance to work out all of your fulfillment bugs at the same time before you roll it out nationally. Or you can work on improving your conversion rates. If you can increase the percentage of visitors who move through the stages of the process, you'll need fewer leads coming out at the top of the funnel to achieve your business goals. And finally, what are your business goals? What results do you need to see, and in what time frame to consider your efforts a success? The quicker you need to see results, the more you'll have to rely on paid advertising rather than earned channels. So as an example, a search marketing campaign can begin driving traffic as soon as it launches, while SEO takes time to drive new visitors to your website. The same can be said for sponsored or paid blog posts that appear on a site fairly quickly once you've made the arrangements with the blogger, as opposed to the longer time frame required when you're generating press mentions through traditional media relations. In that case, not only do you have the time factor in coming to the agreement about what's going to be done, you have the additional delay that comes with print. Obviously, if your target audience has a clear preference for one or two online channels, or only has access to certain budgets or certain channels, that's where you want to focus your efforts. Which brings us back to that last question, and sometimes the first question, depending on the client. What should our budget be? How much should we spend? How do you determine what's reasonable? Again, it depends on your goals. If you currently sell 1,000 units of your product online each month and want to increase that number by 10%, and you know what your average conversion rate is, you can work backwards from there to determine your digital marketing budget. Because again, it becomes a matter of number of impressions and visitors at the top of the funnel equals the number that you're going to get out at the bottom. If 10% of your website visitors typically complete a purchase, that means you'll need 1,000 additional site visitors each month to reach that incremental sales goal. If you're using paid search or Facebook advertising, the average click-through rate for those platforms is about 2%. That means your ads need to be seen 50,000 times to generate 1,000 clicks through to your website. The average cost of those 50,000 impressions, or 1,000 clicks, depending on your bid strategy, is your minimum ad spend per month. If you're using display advertising, it has a click-through rate that's closer to 0.2%. Now you're looking at 500,000 impressions and 10,000 clicks to your website before you begin to generate the appropriate amount of traffic. What if your business model relies on offline sales? You need to take those conversion rates into consideration as well. If your customers call or submit a form online and 10% of those contacts turn into sales, you're back to that initial 500,000 impressions at the top of the funnel to achieve your sales goal. Every time you add a layer to the process, you add a conversion point, and you need to take that percentage of conversions into account when you're calculating how much you need to invest. So you can apply that same logic to determine a rough budget for any online platform, as long as you can estimate conversion rates for each step. If your sales cycle isn't linear, if it takes multiple touches before a prospect completes a purchase, your ad budget will need to be significantly higher to cover multiple tactics and considerations. In addition, don't forget about any initial investment you may need to make in developing a strategy, creating an initial set of ads, and making updates to your website to optimize landing pages to support your campaign. If you're planning to use display ads and social media ads, you need good visuals. If you don't have those visuals, you need to account for the investment either in photography or in custom graphics to be developed. If you're looking at a blogger outreach strategy, you may not have to write the long form content, but you still have to gather all of the research and all of the facts that you want those bloggers to use. So there's an assumption, I think, sometimes that social media advertising in particular is quick and easy because everyone knows how to use social media. But when you're using it for advertising, it really does take a different level of commitment, a different level of investment to have a professional presence. We've covered a lot of ground so far, so I'm going to recap a couple of important points. When it comes to digital marketing, it's very difficult to build an effective strategy around just one tactic. We won't say it can't be done under the right set of circumstances, but in most cases, prospects need more than one message, one type of interaction, one nudge to move through the decision-making process. The stronger your customer personas are, the better your digital marketing strategy will be. The closer your prospects are to the top of the funnel, the more you'll need to engage them on their turf. As they move through the process, you can begin to draw them into your territory. When you look at that funnel, the design is deliberate. There are more people at the top of the funnel, but it also takes more effort to move them down through. As each group gets smaller, they also get more concentrated, more focused. You have a better chance of interacting and a better chance of conversion. If you want to play at the very top, you need to be concerned about your budget. Number 4, the customer journey isn't always linear. Loops, do-overs, and stalls are common. You may engage with the same prospect at the same stage multiple times before they move to the next step. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your marketing strategy or any shortfalls on your part. Every decision maker is a little bit different. They will get through the process eventually, but the path they take isn't always a straight line. And lastly, be realistic about your limitations and expectations. It's possible to market effectively on a small budget, but big goals need time, dollars, and resources to support them. I'm going to back up just a little bit. We typically get a question when we talk about customer personas about where to find the information you need to fully flesh those out, to really get into the details. And there's a couple of sources that we'll recommend to new clients. If it's a brand new company, your industry associations, trade groups, may be able to provide you with some background information on typical conversions, on what some of those sales processes look like, on common factors that define your audience. They're a great place to start. At a more expensive level, you can look at something like Forrester Research. You can actually reach out and either purchase existing data or engage a group like that to do some consumer background data for you. Focus groups are another great way. We're very fortunate in our area to have a lab at a local university that can do usability testing. And as part of that, they also have facilities for focus groups. So you may be able to do that at a fairly low cost if you think a little outside of the box in terms of the resources you use. And lastly, if you're an established company, one of your best sources of information about those personas is going to be either your inside sales team, if you rely on a sales force, or your customer service people who answer the phone when a consumer calls with a question or a problem. They're going to be able to tell you what those common trigger points or pain points are. They're going to be able to tell you the last question that someone asks before they're willing to make a purchase and give you a ton of insight into messaging, into the average demographics of those groups and how they like to interact online. They're a huge resource. We always encourage, if we're putting together a strategy for the first time for the company, make sure those sales folks are in the room. They've got a huge amount of information to share. Okay. That's all we have to share for today. We're wrapped up just a little bit early, but keep an eye on your email for information on accessing the replay after the webinar, and please reach out if you have additional questions. Thanks, everyone.